Hey there. This week, South Africa's cold front went on a national tour, bringing snow, freezing temperatures, and a little hail in Gauteng. Thankfully, it's starting to warm up, and we can't wait for spring. In the election frenzy, a new poll suggests the ANC could sink to just 18% in Johannesburg. This makes Helen Zille's mayoral bid a serious test of whether the DA can turn chaos into opportunity. Not unrelated, though, in Cape Town, tenants are being pushed out as luxury homes replace rentals. Meanwhile, Sophie Williams-de Bruyn renders a warning 70 years after the Women's March that freedom for women is still unfinished. And in international news, Zambia votes today with its president's economic comeback on the line. The Lake Kariba ferry tragedy has left Zimbabwe shaken, and higher education has entered its Lincoln Bio era with a professor who has put marmot research on OnlyFans after funding dried up. Before we dive in, pass the wrap onto someone who deserves the news without the jargon. Subscribe at explain.coza/subscribe. First up in your national news, ANC bigwigs are squabbling about vote buying. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma set the cat among the pigeons by accusing ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula and International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola of using money to influence delegates at elective conferences. Both deny wrongdoing and have threatened the party stalwart with legal action, demanding a retraction. ANC Northern Cape Chair Zamani Saul has acknowledged that money is used at elective conferences to, quote, influence the leadership race, close quote. He refuted NDZ's specific allegations and insisted the party is working to stop vote buying. 14 suspected illegal miners have died near Marikana. Their bodies were recovered from an old mine shaft in the northwest on Monday. The deaths come as government pushes for tougher laws to combat illegal mining, including penalties of up to 30 years in prison and fines up to 100 million rand. Illegal mining has been linked to organized crime. It damages infrastructure such as underground water pipes. The latest tragedy reminds us that it's the people underground who pay the highest price in the shadowy industry. Cape Town tenants are being squeezed out. Former residents of an Atlantic seaboard block said this week they had been given just 30 days to vacate after the building was sold for a luxury redevelopment, with homes starting from over 8 million rand. The mother city consistently sees steeper rental increases than the rest of South Africa, and available rentals are at a record low of 1% thanks to surging property prices, semigration, and a glut of Airbnbs. We have to ask, just who is Cape Town being built for? Your medical aid may be covering less for more money. In unsurprising news, rather, to anyone who has ever felt faint at the sight of a specialist bill, the Board of Healthcare Funders said this week that prescribed minimum benefits, the conditions and treatments these schemes must cover, aka PMBs, have not been properly updated since 2003. There was a minor tweak in 2020 to add COVID to the list, but that's it. The board wants a proper review of the framework to ease the squeeze on members' pockets. South Africa's new digital travel system promises visas within 24 hours. President Cyril Ramaphosa launched the new electronic travel authorization at Ora Tambo on Wednesday, allowing eligible travelers to apply online using their passport and biometrics, replacing paper, with decisions expected within 24 hours. The system has already processed more than 200,000 applications and flagged over 6,000 suspected fraudulent ones. This finally makes it easier for tourists to visit South Africa while tightening border security. More tourists spending their money here could mean more businesses and jobs. In your international news, Zambia votes today, but its president's economic comeback may not be enough. Zambians are choosing a president, MPs, and local representatives, and the president, Hakainde Hichilema, is seeking a second term against 13 challengers. Hichilema can point to debt restructuring, billions in mining investment, and falling inflation, but many voters say they're still battling high food prices, unemployment, and unreliable electricity. There is another wrinkle. Zambia is rated only, quote, partly free, end quote, with opposition parties facing barriers to fair competition. Good numbers matter, but do voters actually feel the recovery? A ferry disaster on Zimbabwe's Lake Kariba has killed at least 44 people. The overcrowded vessel capsized on Tuesday after taking on water in rough conditions, despite passengers pleading with the captain to turn back. It was built for 90 passengers, but reportedly carried about 153, including children. Lake Kariba, the world's largest human-made lake by volume, is vital to Zimbabwe and Zambia's electricity supply, but deadly boat accidents are nothing new. In 2014, 26 people, mostly children, drowned in another capsize. Zimbabwe has declared a state of disaster. 2.4 million Afghan girls are still shut out of secondary school. 5 years into Taliban rule, the education ban is still keeping millions of girls out of Afghanistan classrooms, UNESCO said on Tuesday. It's a hugely unpopular policy. A survey last year by UN Women found that 80% of men in rural areas and 95% of men in urban communities want girls to be educated. But it's clear that the Taliban has no regard for the people being crushed beneath the weight of the ban, especially girls and women. Tay-Tay songs have swiftly disappeared from Trump's posts. Several of Donald Trump's campaigns and White House videos that used Taylor Swift songs suddenly went silent this past weekend. Swift has not publicly commented, but given that she's spoken out against Trump before, and he said he hated her after she endorsed Kamala Harris in 2024, nobody is shocked. Other musicians like Sabrina Carpenter and Ariana Grande have also publicly trashed Trump's team in the past for using their music to push his political agenda. A professor put his animal research on OnlyFans after funding dried up. There's something for everyone on OnlyFans, or so we hear, including marmots. When funding cuts threatened a decades-long study of yellow-bellied marmots, a type of squirrel, in Colorado, UCLA professor Daniel Blumstein launched an OnlyFans account. Only Moms shares videos of the chubby rodents and quickly attracted more than 1,700 followers to the adult site. The stunt is funny, but the funding crisis in US science isn't. Scientists shouldn't need a side hustle to do their work. Moving on to your big stories, there are probably some sweaty palms at ANC headquarters this week, thanks to research showing it polling at just 18% in Johannesburg ahead of November's local elections. A new Social Research Foundation poll puts the DA at 42%, the ANC at 18%, and MK at 13%. If November's results follow this pattern, we're not simply talking about the ANC losing support. There will be a fundamental reshuffling of power in South Africa's biggest city. The polling was produced with Victory Research, whose CEO, Gareth van Onselen, previously spent about 12 years working for the DA. That's important context, particularly when his company's latest polling gives the DA such a commanding lead. But does that mean we should chuck the poll in the bin? No. The better test is whether this polling has actually been accurate before. In 2024, it was surprisingly close. Just before the national election, a Social Research Foundation and Victory put the ANC at 42.2%. It eventually received 40.18%. They predicted the DA would win 21.6% of the vote and finished on 21.81%. Figures for the MK and the EFF were a bit further off, but the poll captured the overall direction of the election pretty well. Van Onselen's earlier polling in 2019 was less precise, particularly for opposition parties. So, credible enough to take seriously, but definitely not gospel. The more interesting question is what 18% would mean for Joburg. The city has spent years bouncing between unstable coalitions and is falling apart. If the DA gets anywhere near 42%, it still won't have an outright majority, but will need far fewer coalition partners to govern. An ANC performance of 20% or lower, meanwhile, would require it to enter into a complicated coalition with many different parties. MK polling at 13% suggests that former ANC voters aren't simply running into the DA's arms. The ANC could be losing people in several directions, including to parties closer to its own political tradition. Turnout on the day could still completely change the game. Local elections are notoriously sensitive to which supporters actually bother voting. So don't read 18% as November's result. Read it as a warning. The ANC may now be fighting not just to regain Johannesburg, but to remain one of the city's dominant political forces at all. Moving on to the Madlanga Commission, Andrea Johnson's first appearance at the Commission was a rough ride, and unfortunately for her, the sequel is loading. For the past 2 weeks, IDAC prosecutor Dushanta Ramsamy has delivered some of the Commission's most damaging testimony yet about how South Africa's flagship anti-corruption unit pursued senior crime intelligence officials. Her evidence began on 30 July and continued across several sittings in August, scheduled to resume tomorrow or Friday. Ramsamy's broader allegation is that IDAC became entangled in factional battles inside crime intelligence. Johnson's husband, Janae Johnson, is a crime intelligence officer. Commissioners have also scrutinized her close relationship with suspended crime intelligence deputy Major General Feroz Khan. Ramsamy has accused her former boss of personally driving investigations that Johnson later presented as being prompted by others, targeting senior police officials without proper legal foundations, and misleading both Parliament and the Commission about what she knew and when. Johnson has not yet answered many of these latest allegations, which remain untested. But this is quite the fall for someone with serious prosecutorial pedigree. Johnson began prosecuting in the 1990s, worked closely in the Scorpions, and was part of the team which prosecuted Oscar Pistorius. She went on to become the first head of the Permanent Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, or IDAC. Now she has resigned and is expected to be recalled. When she returns to the commission, she has several uncomfortable questions to answer. 1. Why did she allegedly tell Ramsamy in an explosive recorded call played for the commission to leave the country if summoned to testify? Did she mislead Parliament of the timeline of IDAC's 360 million rand Medicare 24 police tender investigation? Did she personally drive investigations into crime intelligence figures while later suggesting investigators led them? And did her husband's position and her relationship with Khan influence who IDAC targeted? Then there is National Coloured Congress leader Fadil Adams. His January 2025 affidavit helped trigger the IDAC investigation into crime intelligence boss Dumisani Kumalo, whose case was later provisionally withdrawn. The commission wants Adams to explain how that complaint came together. But getting him into the stand has become its own drama. He blamed delays on a faulty parliamentary laptop, an explanation Justice Madlanga called unbelievable. Parliament's IT records reportedly did not support his claims. His testimony is now scheduled for 19 August. Johnson still has to return. Adams still has to explain himself. At this commission, every answer seems to open up 3 new questions. And finally, it's Women's Month. It's been 7 decades since Sophie Williams-de Bruyn, then just 18, joined about 20,000 women on a historical march to the Union Buildings to protest the apartheid regime's past laws. On Sunday, she was back at the Union Buildings, aged 88, with a message for the country. There is still plenty of work to be done. Sure, we've heard that message before, but it landed differently because Williams-de Bruyn is not looking back on the 9th of August 1956 by pointing to the pages of a history textbook. She was there. She cautioned those gathered at this gathering at the seat of government that political freedom has not translated into the kind of everyday freedom women were promised. She said, "This is not the freedom we marched for." She pointed to gender-based violence, poverty, and inequality as evidence that too many women remain unsafe and economically vulnerable. The women of 1956 were fighting a specific law, but their protest represented something bigger: dignity, independence, and the ability to move through society without being controlled by the state. South Africa has changed dramatically since then. Women can vote, hold office, own property, study, work, and participate in public life, empowered by a constitution that explicitly protects equality. But women's daily realities often differ dramatically from what's promised by legislation. More than 35% of South African women aged 18 and older have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. The situation is so dire that late last year the government classified femicide and gender-based violence as a national disaster. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that dealing with the scourge demands exceptional measures. The government has also acknowledged some of the other struggles that women face. For instance, the unemployment rate among women is higher than it is for men, and women hold fewer managerial positions in the workforce than men do. So Williams-de Bruyn was absolutely right to ask whether South Africa has confused winning human rights with finishing all the work that's needed for genuine equality and equity. Ramaphosa also spoke at Sunday's event, arguing that freedom is an ongoing responsibility, rather than something South Africans commemorate once a year. Still, Williams-de Bruyn remains hopeful. She praised women who continue holding families and communities together, despite what she described as failures of leadership. It's a reminder that we can celebrate Women's Day each year on 9th August, honor what was won by those brave women, and not pretend that the job is close to done. That's it from us at The Wrap. Remember to share the love, tell your friends to subscribe at explain.co.za/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.